Good for a smaller camera. Mounts screws on the tripod just like that. Just like that. Screws on the camera just like that. Just screws on the camera. This is what a SL3 looks like. It's a very common choice for people getting into photography. It's a Canon's entry-level camera. By no means this is the only camera you can shoot with, but it's a good choice. This SL3 is first and foremost equipped with my wife's camera strap. It's a very nice camera to hold. Like the grip is good for both people with big hands like me or somebody with smaller hands. It's an ergonomic camera. It's equipped with a pop-up flash. You can just use like that. It's a very nice feature. You have the shutter button right here with the dial here to change various settings. You have the ISO changed right from the button on top right here. You can go into display on or off with the display button right here. And then you have a lot of modes from the mode dial. We'll get into that. The menu button is here. A lot of Canon's cameras are equipped with similar button placements, so that's why I thought going over them is not a bad idea, because a lot of you with different Canon cameras or even with Nikons have similar camera placement. The dial is still here, or even mirrorless cameras, similar button placements. The shutter button is still right there. So the reason they place it in that manner is because people from different camera systems, different brands can still shoot different cameras. Going over the camera layout so that we can get ourselves familiar with our tool, let's start with the viewfinder, which is really the main thing on a camera, because that's where you see through the lens. The viewfinder can be of two main types nowadays. There's the optical viewfinder, which is in this camera, and there's also a digital viewfinder, which is in mirrorless cameras. It's called in sensor mode or live view mode in regular cameras. It shows you the actual ISO, exposure, shutter speed the camera is set at. It's a little bit different. In an optical viewfinder, you see without those settings being applied. In a digital, you see with those settings being applied. So that's the only difference. I prefer an optical finder, not because I've been shooting with them all my life, but it's just because it's much more natural for me, natural view. It's actually what I see from the lens, not a digital renderation of that. So that's what I prefer. But whatever works for you, it's no big deal. You have various like inputs and outputs. That's the HDMI, the USB port, and then you have other things such as a mic input if you're shooting video, and then you've got the remote shutter here if you're shooting like remotely from the camera on the tripod. So it's good for time lapses and things like that. We'll get into that. This camera also has a LCD screen which can be rotated and tilted for different views, different angles. That's a pretty neat feature. There's also a tripod mount if you want to hook in a tripod. So that's a good little neat feature right there. If you want to shoot like portraiture, night photography, things like videos like we're shooting right now, you use this tripod adapter. There's the battery and the card. Here, the battery and the card. So there's only one card in this camera. That's all you're going to need unless you're shooting professional. Professional cameras have two card slots. It's mainly because there's a backup. So if your card fails, you don't lose your shoot. So that's very important with professional cameras. But as this is a 101 or an introduction into how to shoot, so I think one card slot would be okay. The lens, this camera comes with a 18 to 55 millimeter Canon lens, zoom lens. So it goes from 18 to 55. This is the focal length. It's not aperture, shutter speed, ISO. It's something different. It's not complicated. Once you get into photography, you learn these terms. So don't get alarmed by all the new terms and terminologies and numbers. I understand it's a lot of information to take in, and it's a lot of things going on, but don't get alarmed by these things. So the focal length is essentially the zoom value. We will call it the zoom value. It's the, so if you're in 18, you're zoomed out. If you're on 55, you're zoomed in. So that's what it is. So it's a formula which deals with the frame size and the lens element movement, which gives you these millimeter on the lens, these millimeter numbers. Without getting into the complications of things, an easy way to put it is just as a zoom value. So that's what we're going to call it, the zoom value. This is a cropped frame camera. So the sensor is 1.6 times full or 1.6 times 35 millimeter. So that's what it is. It's a cropped frame camera. The difference between a full frame or a crop frame, and there are others too, other variations. They're like a 1-inch frame or 1-inch sensor, or mobile phones which have a smaller sensor even from 1 inch. The sensor size mainly affects what do you call the light gathering abilities. Without getting into further complications about these terms, what that means is a larger sensor size can get more light in. The difference between a crop frame and a full frame is in its light gathering abilities. From our other video where we used our bucket and tap or a window analogy, what we were saying there, or an easy way to put it here, would be if you have a bigger window, you get more light in. If it's a crop sensor camera, you have a smaller window, well, a 40% smaller window into the camera sensor. So what that does is you get 40% less light in, which is not necessarily a bad thing in all of the things put together. The advantage of that is the size of the camera itself is smaller now, because the sensor is smaller. So the camera around it can be much more compact. So that makes mobile phones, for example, have a really small camera sensor, which means that the camera on mobile phones can be very small. So you have portability advantage there. And then, do you need that much of a sensor? Nowadays, you can bump up the ISO and do other things to adjust for it. So not really, it's not really necessary. It's an added bonus if you're shooting low light photography, such as night, indoor portraiture. Sure, and it also gives you more background blur. You have lenses which can do that nowadays, which are fairly compact, like pancake lenses. Those lenses can go up to 2.5 and you get similar results. So for a person getting into photography, in my opinion, a more basic camera such as this with a rich feature set like this, and a compact sensor which gives a compact camera overall, is a much better pick. It is more portable. And remember, the best camera out there is the camera you have in your hands. So if a more portable camera makes it easier for you to take it everywhere and anywhere you go, so that's the best camera you have, right? That's at least how I would go with things and how I would pick my camera, but it's up to you. This is again a Canon SL3. So if you want to step up to a prosumer level, you have a Canon 80D, 70D. And Nikon, you have the 7100, 7200. In Sony, you've got the mirrorless cameras, the A6000. And if you want to go to a pro level, you've got the Canon one-digit cameras such as the 6D, 5D, 1D. You've got the Nikon D5, D800, D700. You've got the Sony Alpha 3, Alpha 1, the mirrorless cameras. So it really depends. I would go with a camera which sits well into your budget and not go over that, because then, you're getting into these things. You can always sell it or upgrade it or get something else, get a next camera, second camera, make this your second camera. So don't get too much into these things. As we talked in our previous video, it's a tool to take photos. It's sort of like if you have a Mercedes and you don't put gas in it, it's not going to go anywhere. A camera is a camera. If you don't know how to use it or make use of it, it's not going to take better pictures for you, right? You need to know how to use it, whether it be a mobile phone or a DSLR. So get something which is just over your abilities and not something which overwhelms you, and not something which is not allowing you to grow into a better photographer. Getting into holding a camera in a DSLR or a mirrorless camera, which is mainly new photographers or pro photographers' go-to cameras. You have a camera grip on the right hand side, which allows you to hold it with one hand. So you prop your thumb on this little grip. So you can hold a camera one-handed, which gives you, various angles you could shoot with. Two-handed, of course, will give you more stability. So you can put one hand underneath it and then use your thumb for the zoom or changing the focus on the lens. That'll give you more stability. And then you can hold it this way, and then you can shoot it this way for much more stable pictures. And that's how a camera is meant to be held anyways. And then you can use your thumb to pop up the flash. In some cameras there's a button here for popping up the flash. It's electronic. In this camera it's manual. It works. This right here is a hot shoe for mounting flashes. That's something later on we'll talk about in our sort of advanced courses, because this is another game in itself, so ignore this for now, but you can use pop-up flashes. So there's a microphone on either side here, so when you're shooting videos, make sure you don't rub your thumb on it, because then you'll get a lot of sound. You don't want any video like thumb scratching. This button right here, in most cameras it's somewhere here, it changes the lenses. So you can take the lens out. To put the lens back on, there's a white square. In some cameras there is a red square. So there's a white square. You line it with the white square here, like that, and then you turn it clockwise, and that locks the lens in. Make sure it's locked in, because sometimes you don't lock in fully, and then what happens is you tend up dropping it, so don't do that. On the lens side of things, that's the autofocus. A lot of kit lenses have these. So that's autofocus on and off. What that does is autofocus on will focus for you, and if it's on manual you can use the ring to focus. So that's pretty much that function right there. The stabilizer on and off, what that does is it stabilizes the shot for you. So if it's off, it'll be shaky, and if it's on, it'll be smooth. Sometimes you want it off if the camera is on a tripod. Sometimes you want it on if you're hand holding the camera. Mostly leave it on. A lot of professional cameras have a lot more buttons. It's to do with ergonomics of things. The grip is a little bit bigger, so if you're holding the camera, you have a more comfortable hold. With these camera, ergonomics really is that much more important, because you remember you're shooting events for a longer duration of time, so comfortable hold is much more important. With the buttons layout on Canon 6D Mark II, in this case, there's a slider which changes the aperture, which is at the back. There's also a slider on the top which changes the shutter speed. You can reconfigure these buttons to do pretty much what you would like to them, but by default this changes the aperture, that changes the shutter speed, so that's the setting by default. There's a lock button which locks these settings, because if you're shooting in a professional setting, you're sometimes rubbing your shirt might be rubbing here or somewhere. You must maybe touch a button by mistake, so you don't want the settings to be messed up, so you can lock it and unlock. There's a mode dial, which is again, the mode dial is a little more different in a professional camera, which has like custom modes, C1 and C2s, but the rest of the mode settings are the same, which is the M mode, manual mode, AV mode, which is aperture priority mode, TV mode, which is the shutter speed priority mode, and P mode, which is the program mode. We're going to go into all of these settings in a much more deeper level later on. The menu button is still there, the info button is still there, the viewfinder is still the same. It's a little bit bigger, because remember, this camera is a full frame camera, so the sensor from a crop frame camera is just about 40%, or more accurately 38% bigger, because the sensor is bigger, so the viewfinder is bigger. In one of our videos we mentioned lenses and what are the different kinds of lenses there are, and also what they do for you. Let's get a recap from there. Lenses are mounted in the front of the camera because light enters from a lens to the camera sensor. They're pretty important. They're pretty much sort of like paintbrushes to a painter. and a canvas is sort of a sensor to a camera. Lenses come in different variations of focal lengths. So again, focal length is sort of the zoom value. This right here is a very wide angle lens, as may be apparent by the bulbous lens element. It's a very wide angle lens. It's a 12 millimeter lens, which is almost 180-degree panoramic, good for indoors and architecture. Very wide angle. This one is a 50 mm lens with a 1.4 lens element. As you can see, it's huge. It's 1.4. So this kind of lens will give you nice blurry backgrounds and nice portraiture. Also very compact if you remove the lens hood. It's very compact, so this would give you nice portability if you have that one lens you need. This one right here is a pancake lens. They call this a pancake lens because it's, well, flat like a pancake. And this one would be very portable. This one is a this one is a 2.8 f number lens, so very light gathering and a very portable lens if you have a smaller camera. Bigger lenses mostly give you a longer zoom length, a longer focal length, which is the zoom value, so you get things uptight, zoomed out, you can capture them. Those lenses are normally longer. Smaller lenses have focal lengths which is in the normal zone, like your smartphone, 28 mm, or ranges of 50 mm. So up close, normal focal lengths, which will be a smaller lens. So very portable. Wide angle lenses are heavy because they're wider and they give you a very panoramic view of shots, landscapes and indoors. Zoom kit lenses are very basic kit lenses which cover values from 18 to 55 mostly, which gives you 28 there because it's 18 to 55. Then it also gives you 50 at the very end. So lenses like zoom lenses are good for all around walk around photography, leave it on the camera, very basic, very light. So in that sense, it's a jack of all, master of none. So that's all about lenses here on a very basic level. Tripods come in different sizes. This one is a very light portable tripod. This one is carbon fiber, so it's not that heavy, but a little bit more weight does make a difference when you're carrying these for longer distances. They both have different heads mounted on them. This one is a pan head, very nice and light, very good for smaller cameras, pretty good. You don't need anything sturdier than this for a very small camera, and it screws on the tripod just like that, and then it also has a bubble level, which really gives you an indication if your camera is stable, straight, and on an angle which you want. A bigger tripod head like this one, this is made up of magnesium, and which gives it a very light weight because it's an element which is of very less density, so it's not that heavy, but it is metal. It is aluminum, magnesium, and steel where it has to be. The reason it's made up of metal is because to give stability to a bigger camera, such as the 6D Mark II or 5D Mark III or a Canon 1DX, Nikon D5, and bigger cameras, professional cameras need a much more stable base to be mounted on. This tripod head is also a screw-on base, and that's the mount which is mounts on, and it's also a screw mount, and it also screws on the tripod head just like that. Screw it on, make sure it's tight, and there you go. Again, tilt both this way and this way, and then you've got pan, and then you can also adjust the friction level for the tilting. So if you want it to be tilted slowly, you can tighten it, and then if you want it to be tilted very fast, you can loosen it up. So for bigger cameras, this is very important. So if you've got a very big camera, you tighten it so that it tilts the same way as a smaller camera would, because it's heavier weight. So you need like tighter spring rates on the tripod. Professional, bigger cameras, portable, lighter cameras, easier to put in your suitcase, your bag. So it's very easy to pack up in your suitcase for your vacation or wherever you're headed to. So just flip the legs up. And there you go. Nice and light. But this guy right here, it's you put the neck down and then you close the legs up. Oh, it's the latches are of opening and closing kind. A little bit different than a screw-on latches, but that's how you would carry it. Looking at the size differences, it's almost half the size. It's insane. This is really heavy, really light. Different purposes, packing up or shooting landscape. Camera bags to carry the camera come in different variation and sizes. This one right here is a camera bag which allows you to carry one lens and one camera. It's a very small camera bag, perhaps a few accessories in the pocket right here for carrying the camera around on one strap, on a strap, on your shoulder. Nice and portable. This is a little bigger. Maybe you can fit two smaller lenses and one small camera, two smaller lenses, accessories, front pocket. This one you can carry around again with a shoulder strap, or also you have a waist strap for putting it around your waist. So again, putting a camera bag around your waist really helps your shoulders not carry all that weight. If you have a heavier camera here, you don't want a lot of weight on your shoulders. With your waist, it's okay. You can carry your camera for a long distance. So this camera bag is from Lure Pro. It's a very nice camera bag which you can carry on your back. It has a front accessory pocket right here for a lot of things which you can hold. It has a side pocket for more stuff. It has a tripod leg latch which you can put a tripod on the side and clip the tripod in with this, and then you can put another, maybe a light stand for a flash here, and then on the back it has a back access because you don't want anybody to open the camera bag from the back and then take out your stuff. You don't want that. So it's a back access. You've got your mic, you've got a camera with a full lens, you've got all these compartments which you can put your gear in, different pockets, and these are Velcro, so you can take these off. You can take these off and arrange the boxes or the squares in whatever way you want. You can have your filters, ND filters. We're going to talk about this in a future video, going in depth on. This is much more of advanced technique of photography. We'll talk about it in the future courses. Just as a reference, you can put your stuff organized nicely. You'll have little pockets for SD cards and little accessories. So you have a bunch of SD cards here. These ones are from SanDisk. They're 64 gigs, Extreme Pros, fast transfer rates. When you're shooting continuous photography, you want that fast transfer rate so that your camera does not lag when saving those shots. So these are Extreme Pros, more than 100 MBs per second transfer rate. Very nice for that. We've got a few in SD card cases. This one comes with this one is really interesting. It comes with a adapter and a micro SD card. So what that does is that allows you to put this in your phone and transfer the photos right away without using the Wi-Fi or Bluetooth function, which is sometimes really a little slow and jarring. So you can just put this in your phone. It is the same speed as the bigger ones, so you have that flexibility. The only disadvantage for a smaller card like this is between the adapter and the smaller card, there can be, like, in some instances, there can be cases where you have errors popping up because of lack of connection between a smaller card and the jacket. There's transfer communication errors, which a professional photographer might not really like because they might not record anything. But if you're a person who wants the photos on their phone for posting it on Instagram or Facebook or any other social media networks right away, this is a really good option. But again, this one is not as robust as a card with, you know, direct communication. This one is a micro SD. So this one is not as robust as something like this, but much more flexible. So these guys, you can have them stored in your SD card pocket. You can store little things, little stuff, and then there's a back pocket which has, you can put more stuff in, organized, nicely. The other function with which you would want to look in a camera bag when purchasing one is something this one has, which is a rain cover. So if you're on a motorcycle like me and you don't want your camera gear to get wet, you can put a rain cover around the camera bag, which really stops water getting into it. And then once you're done and the rain stops, you can just put the rain cover back inside, and then there's Velcro it back on. So that's a very neat feature. There's also a very neat feature in this camera bag by Loewe Pro, which is a front tripod, a bigger tripod mount. So what you do is you put the tripod through here and a tripod leg through here, which allows you to carry a tripod. So another neat feature about this camera bag is when you wear it, you clip it like that for additional support. And if you want to access anything from the back, flip it over, access what you need. For example, if I need this, take it out, and then you zip it back, and then that's it. Pretty good if you're hiking around town and you don't want to put the camera bag down and take stuff out. So camera bags. In this video, we went over a lot of things which you will get with the camera, which would make your whole photography experience nice, complement it. Carry your camera using camera bags. If you have a smaller camera, you can get these camera bags, and later if you get a bigger camera, much more lenses, a camera system, you can transition into something like this, bigger, with more pockets, more lens space, more stuff. You can use this to carry around. And then we talked about tripods. We talked about a bigger tripod for a bigger camera, smaller tripod, and various functions those present to you as a user. And then we talked about SD cards, a card with a micro SD or a bigger SD card. So really it's about the ergonomics of things, it's about the portability. So you have to decide for yourself what kind of a camera bag, card, and tripod, and these things which you would be investing in. Remember, it's an investment. It's something which you really need and require. So make sure you stay within your affordability when purchasing equipment. It's very easy to get swayed and go out of budget. Don't really do that. Stay within your purchasing power, stay within your affordability, but get good stuff in the first go. You shouldn't be getting something cheap for the sake of getting it and then regretting it later. Don't do that. Get something nice and sturdy when it's a tripod. Get a nice and sturdy camera bag, because it's something which you would using for years and on. I've had these for a long time and they still last. So get something right in the first go. That way you wouldn't regret it later. To start with, if you're starting with a smaller basic camera, which you should as a beginner, photographer getting into things, get something smaller like this with one or two lenses which you can put alongside with the cameras. If you're already into photography, if you're using a bigger prosumer professional camera, get a bigger camera bag like this, or even bigger to store all your big lenses. So it's really about getting all that stuff which would really complement your photography experience. So in the next video, we're going over all the settings, features, functions, all the modes in the camera, showing you through the camera lens, how do you take that shot, which you already have in your mind before you even press the shutter button. All right, we'll see you in the next video.